The stars were quiet when the message arrived. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the deep space monitoring station, watching the endless black of space through the thick glass windows. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't notice. Night shifts on Station Alpha 7 were always boring. Nothing ever happened out here in the empty space between star systems. Then the computer started screaming. Jake jumped up from his chair as red lights flashed across every screen in the control room. The main display showed wave after wave of signals coming from somewhere far away. His hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to understand what was happening. Computer, identify signal source, Jake said. Unknown origin, distance approximately 400 light-year, signal strength increasing. Jake frowned. Nothing should be out there. The altar systems were peaceful farming worlds. The blue-skinned people who lived there had never caused trouble for anyone. They grew food and made art and kept to themselves. The signal cleared up slowly. At first it was just noise and static. Then Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. It was a voice speaking in broken English with a strange accent. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. They're killing us. They are killing all of us. Jake's fingers flew over the controls, recording everything. The voice continued, getting weaker. We are the people of Altar. We have never hurt anyone. We grow food. We make music. We have children, but they came from the dark between stars. They have ships like metal insects. They take our people away. They burn our cities. Please help us. We will give you anything, everything we have. The cut signal faded to nothing. Jake stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Then he reached for the emergency communication button. Within hours, the message had reached Earth. Jake watched from his station as military ships began jumping into the system around him. The first to arrive was Commander Lisa Chang on the heavy cruiser Defender. Chang was tough. Everyone in the fleet knew her story. She had grown up on a border colony that got attacked by pirates when she was 12. Her parents died protecting her and her little brother. She joined the military the day she turned 18 and had been fighting ever since. Jake met Chang in the station's small briefing room. She was shorter than he expected, with short black hair and scars on her hands from old battles, but her eyes were hard as steel. Play it again, she said. Jake played the recording 3 more times. Each time Chang's face got darker. How many people live in the altar systems? She asked. About 2 billion across 7 worlds, Jake said. They're not fighters. They don't even have a real military, just some old ships for moving cargo between planets. Chang was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up. I'm taking a scout ship to have a look. Keep monitoring for more signals, Commander. Shouldn't we wait for orders from Earth? Chang looked at him with those hard eyes. Those people asked for help. I'm going to see what kind of help they need. 3 days later, Chang returned. Jake had never seen her look so angry. The briefing room filled up with officers from the other ships that had arrived. Chang stood at the front, her face like stone. It's bad, she said. Worse than we thought. She activated the holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the table. Jake felt sick looking at them. The first image showed a city on fire. Buildings that looked like giant flowers were burning and collapsing. The second showed bodies. The streets, hundreds of them. The blue skinned people of Alter lying dead, where they had fallen. This was the capital city of Alter. Prime, Chang said, population 3 million. I found maybe 50,000 survivors hiding in the underground tunnels. More images appeared. Ships that looked like giant metal insects hung in the sky above. Burning cities, Jake recognized them from intelligence reports. The Kree Dominion, bug-like aliens from the far edge of the galaxy. They were known for being cruel and treating other species like animals. The Kree showed up 6 months ago, Chang continued. They didn't try to talk, didn't ask for surrender. They just started killing. The Altarians tried to fight back with their cargo, ships and mining equipment. It didn't work. One of the other officers, a young man named Pete Davis, raised his hand. What do they want? Resources, territory. Chang shook her head. They want the Altarians gone. All of them. They're not taking prisoners except for work slaves. And those don't live long. The room was silent. Jake watched the faces of the military officers around the table. These were people who had seen war before, but something about this was different. I met with the survivors, Chang said. Their leader is an old man named Zefka. He told me something interesting. The Altarians are telepaths, not strong ones, but they can sense thoughts and feelings from other species. So Pete asked, so when they sent out that cry for help, they didn't send it to everyone. They sent it specifically to us, to humans. Chang paused. He said they looked into the minds of different species across the galaxy. Most were too scared of the Kree to help. Others didn't care about strangers dying far away. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. What did they see in human minds? Chang smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. They saw monsters, but monsters who protect the innocent. Zevka said they could sense something in humans that other species don't have, a fury that wakes up when children are threatened, a willingness to do terrible things to save people who can't save themselves. The room was very quiet now. The Galactic Council is meeting about this, Chang continued. They'll probably spend months talking and making committees. The peaceful species will say we should negotiate. The scared ones will say it's not their problem. She turned off the holographic display. But here's what I think. Those people asked us for help. They're dying while the galaxy talks, and they chose us because they knew we'd actually do something about it. Pete shifted in his chair. What kind of something? Chang looked around the room at each officer. The kind of something that monsters do. Jake watched the faces around the table change. These were good people, people who had joined the military to protect others, but he could see something else in their eyes now, something cold and angry and determined. Commander Chang was right. The Altarians had called for help, but they hadn't just called for heroes or peacekeepers or diplomats. They had reached across space and called for humanity's monsters, the people who could do what needed to be done. When talking failed, the meeting ended quietly. Officers went back to their ships to wait for orders from Earth, but Jake could see in their faces that they wouldn't wait long. Not while people were dying. Later that night, Jake sat alone in his control room, listening to the recordings again. The voice of the dying Alarian echoed in the empty station. Please help us. We will give you anything, everything we have. They had asked for help, and Jake had a feeling they were about to get exactly the kind of help they needed, the kind that monsters provide. Colonel Danny Wright. Watched the news reports from his small apartment on Mars Colony 7. The screen showed talking heads debating what Earth should do about the Altarian crisis. Politicians argued about costs and risks. Diplomats spoke about the need for careful planning and committee meetings. Danny turned off the screen and discussed. He had seen this before. The galaxy was full of good people who wanted to help others, but only if it was safe and easy and didn't cost too much. At 62, Danny was too old for active military service. The government had forced him to retire 5 years ago after what they called psychological concerns. Those concerns started when pirates hit the Proxima colony and killed his wife and daughter while he was away on a mission. The concerns got worse when Danny hunted down every single pirate involved and made sure they died slowly. The military said he had become too dangerous for peacetime service. They were probably right. Danny walked to his wall safe and pulled out a secure communication device. It was illegal for retired officers to have military-grade equipment, but Danny had never cared much about rules when lives were at stake. He started making calls. The first call went to Elena Rodriguez on Europa Station. Elena was 34 and had been the best Special Forces operator in the fleet until she got caught running an unauthorized mission to rescue hostages. On Titan, the hostages lived. Terrorists didn't. Elena got court-martialed for excessive use of force and failure to follow proper procedures. Danny, Elena's voice came through the secure channel. I saw the news. Those bug bastards are really doing it, aren't they? They are, and Earth is going to talk about it for 6 months while more people die. Elena was quiet for a moment. What do you need? People who remember what we're supposed to be protecting. I know some people, good people, who got kicked out for being too good at their jobs. Danny smiled grimly. Get them ready. I'll be in touch. The second call went to Kevin Stone at the asteroid mining station where he worked now. Kevin had been the best fighter pilot in the fleet until he saved a civilian transport by ramming a pirate cruiser with his fighter. The transport lived. 300 civilians went home to their families, but Kevin had destroyed a 50 million credit fighter without permission, so they threw him out. Stone here. Kevin, it's Danny. Right? Are you watching the news? Yeah. Makes me sick. When do we leave? Danny laughed. Kevin never wasted time on small talk. Soon. Can you get us ships? I know where to find some. The new prototype they've been testing at Luna shipyard. The one they say is too dangerous to use. The Retribution. That's the one. Designers built it to kill everything in a star system if needed. Pentagon decided it was overkill for peacetime. Sounds perfect. Think you can borrow it? Kevin chuckled. Borrow might be too nice a word, but yeah, I can get it. The third call was harder. Amy Parker was only 28, but she had already been through hell. She had volunteered for experimental cybernetic enhancement to help disabled veterans. The program worked too well. Amy came out stronger and faster than any normal human, with computer interfaces wired directly into her brain. The military decided she was too dangerous for service and too scary for civilian life. Now she lived alone on a research station designing defensive systems for colonies. Amy, it's Colonel Wright. Danny, I wondered when you'd call. I've been watching the feeds from Alterpace. It's bad, worse than bad. Will you help us? Amy was quiet for a long time. Danny could hear computer keyboards clicking. In the background, Amy thought better. When her hands were busy, the government won't authorize a rescue mission, she said. Finally, no, they won't, so this would be completely illegal. Theft of military equipment. Unauthorized use of force, probably. Treason, probably. More clicking sounds. I've been running calculations. On the Kree fleet strength, they have about 200 ships in alt airspace, heavy cruisers and fighter support, good weapons, strong armor. Danny waited. They're also used to fighting people who follow rules, people who try to negotiate first and fight clean wars with clear objectives. Amy paused. We're not those people, are we, Danny? No. We're not. Good. I hate fighting clean. I'll bring some friends, the kind of friends that normal people don't like to talk about. Danny made 12 more calls over the next 2 days. Not everyone said yes. Some were too broken by what the military had done to them. Others had found peace in their new lives and didn't want to go back to being weapons. But enough said yes, enough angry, dangerous, discarded people who remembered why they had signed up to protect others in the first place. They met on Siri Station in the asteroid belt. Danny looked around the small conference room at the 15 people who had answered his call. Alina sat cleaning her sidearm with practiced movements. Kevin was studying ship specifications on his tablet. Amy had cables running from her skull to a portable computer, her eyes glowing with data feeds. Others were equally impressive and equally dangerous. Jim Foster, the demolitions expert who got kicked out for blowing up a pirate base with the pirates still inside. Carol Adams, the intelligence officer who had been too good at making enemy agents disappear. Frank Miller, the Marine sergeant who saved an entire colony but killed prisoners who had surrendered, all of them good people who had been thrown away for being too willing to do what needed to be done. You all know why we're here, Danny said. 2 billion innocent people are dying while the galaxy holds meetings. We can sit here and complain about it, or we can do something. Alina looked up from her weapon. What kind of something? The Retribution launches in 6 hours with a skeleton crew. Kevin has convinced the shipyard that it needs a test flight. By the time they figure out it's not coming back, we'll be halfway to alter space. And then Jim asked. Danny activated the holographic display. Images appeared, showing the Kree fleet positions around the alter worlds. Then we remind the galaxy why they used to be afraid of humans. Carol leaned forward. The Kree have 200 ships. We have one ship with enough firepower to crack a planet, Kevin said, plus 15 people who don't care about fighting fair. Amy's eyes stopped glowing and she looked up from her computer. I've been thinking about this. The CRT are bullies. They pick on people who can't fight back. They've never faced anyone who fights like us. How do we fight? Frank asked. Amy smiled. And it was not a nice smile, like monsters. The meeting broke up an hour later. Everyone had their assignments. Kevin would take the Retribution. Alina would handle ground operations. Amy would run electronic warfare. Danny would coordinate everything. As they prepared to leave, Alina pulled Danny aside. You know this is a one-way trip, right? Even if we win, Earth will never let us come back. We'll be criminals. Danny thought about his wife and daughter dead because he hadn't been there to protect Them, he thought about the Altarian. Children hiding in tunnels while monsters hunted them. Good people aren't supposed to need monsters, he said. But sometimes they do anyway, and when that happens, somebody has to be the monster. Elena nodded. She understood. 6 hours later, the most dangerous ship ever built by human hands slipped away from Luna shipyard with 15 monsters aboard. Behind them, Earth continued to debate. Ahead of them, the CFT continued to kill, but the Altarians had asked for help, and help was finally coming. The kind of help that monsters provide. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the altar system like a ghost. Danny Wright stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical displays that showed the nightmare ahead of them. 200 Kree ships hung in space around the 7 Altarian worlds. The insect-like vessels moved in perfect formation, dark metal hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. On the planets below, cities burned. The orbital sensor showed massive refugee camps where the surviving Alarians waited to die. Commander Tony Martinez, the ship's captain, was one of Kevin's old friends. He had been thrown out of the fleet for refusing to abandon a colony under pirate attack. Now he stood beside Danny, studying the enemy positions. They're not even trying to hide, Tony said. Look at this they have. They're heavy cruisers in high orbit, fighters patrolling the inner system. They think they own this place. Elena Rodriguez moved up beside them. She had spent the 3-day journey studying every piece of intelligence they had on the Kree. They do own it. Look at the orbital platforms they've built, landing zones for troop transports, processing stations for prisoners. Amy Parker's voice came through the ship's communication system. She was down in the computer core, wired directly into the ship's systems. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet surfaces, industrial equipment. They're not just killing the Altarians, they're strip mining the worlds while they do it. Danny felt the familiar cold anger building in his chest. It was the same feeling he had gotten when he found out about his family, the same feeling that had made him hunt pirates across 3 star systems. Kevin, what's our weapon status? Kevin Stone was at the pilot station, but his hands moved over the weapons controls like he was playing a musical instrument. All systems ready. Plasma cannons are charged. Torpedo tubes loaded. The experimental railgun is online. Amy, can you break into their communications? Already working on it. Amy's enhanced mind processed data faster than any normal human could think. Their command structure is rigid. Everything goes through the flagship. If we take that out, the rest of their fleet will be confused for several minutes. Danny nodded. Elena, what about ground operations? Elena pointed at the tactical display. They have prison camps on 3 planets, thousands of Altarians still alive, but not for long. The camps are heavily guarded, but the guards are used to prisoners who don't fight back. Danny looked around the bridge. 15 humans against 200 enemy ships and thousands of ground troops. Any sane person would turn around and go home, but they weren't sane. They were monsters. Here's what we do, Danny said. We hit them fast and hard. No warnings, no demands for surrender. We hurt them so badly that they forget how to think straight. Tony smiled grimly. What's the target? All of them. The first attack came without warning. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace directly above The Kree flagship, before the aliens could react, Kevin fired every weapon the ship had. The experimental rail gun punched through the flagship's armor like it was made of paper. Plasma cannons melted weapon systems. Torpedo spreads tore holes in the hull big enough to fly fighters through. The massive Kree command ship died in less than 30 seconds, but the retribution didn't stop there. Kevin threw the ship into a diving attack run that took them through the heart of the enemy formation. He flew like a madman, spinning and rolling to avoid enemy fire, while every weapon on the ship kept firing. Amy's voice filled the bridge. I'm in their communication system. They're panicking. They've never seen anything like this. Their commanders are screaming at each other. 3 more CFT ships exploded under the retributions. Guns, a 4th lost power and drifted helplessly. The enemy formation broke apart as ships scattered in all directions. They're running, Tony said with satisfaction. No, Danny said. They're regrouping. Amy, can you jam their communications? Better than that, I can feed them false orders, make them think their own ships are enemies. For the next hour, the space around Alter Prime turned into chaos. Amy's false signal sent ships attacking each other. Kevin flew the retribution through the confusion like a shark through a school of fish, hitting targets and vanishing before the enemy could respond. But Danny knew they couldn't keep this up forever. 1 ship against 200 was still bad. Odds even. With surprise on their side, Elena, it's time for ground operations. Elena nodded. She had been waiting for this moment. Jim, Carol, Frank, you're with me. We're taking the shuttle down to the prison camps. The shuttle bay doors opened and the small craft dropped toward the surface of Alter Prime. Behind them, the retribution continued its deadly dance with the Kree fleet. The first prison camp was built in what used to be a beautiful city. The Altarians had grown their buildings like living things, structures that looked like giant flowers and trees. Now those buildings were burned ruins and ugly. Metal barracks squatted among them like scars. Elena's team landed the shuttle a kilometer away from the camp. They moved through the ruins on foot, invisible. The smoke and shadows. The Krez were 8 feet tall and looked like giant praying mantises made of black metal. They carried energy weapons and wore heavy armor. They were designed to terrify helpless prisoners. They had never fought humans before. Jim Foster planted his explosives around the camp's power generators, while Carol Adams used her intelligence training to map guard positions. Frank Miller and Elena moved to the main gate. The attack began at exactly noon local time. Jim's bombs killed the power. Carol's sniper rifle dropped the guards in the watchtowers. Frank kicked down the main gate and went in shooting. The CRT guards inside the camp had been torturing Alaran prisoners. When the lights went out, they never saw Elena coming through the darkness. She moved like death itself, her knife finding weak points in their armor, her sidearm dropping them with precise shots to the head. It took 10 minutes to clear the camp. When it was over, 800 Altarian prisoners were free and 30 CH guards were dead. But Elena wasn't done. She had seen the torture chambers. She had seen what the guards were doing to children. She found the camp commander hiding in his office, a particularly large CFT with decorations on his armor. He was trying to call for help on his radio when Elena walked through his door. The commander raised his weapon But Alina was faster. She didn't shoot him. Instead, she knocked the gun away and pulled out her knife. "You like hurting children," she said in the trade language most species understood. The commander chittered something that might have been a plea for mercy. Alina's smile was cold as winter. "So do I when they deserve it." When Alina's team reached the second prison camp, they found something that made them all stop and stare. The Cree had built processing facility next to the camp. Conveyor belts carried Altarian prisoners inside. The prisoners went in alive. They didn't come out. Jim looked at the machinery through his binoculars. "It's a meat processing plant. They're not just killing them, they're turning them into food." Frank Miller, the toughest Marine Danny had ever known, sat down hard and put his head in his hands. "There are children in there. Babies." Alina felt something break inside her chest. It wasn't her heart. Hearts could heal. This was something deeper, something that once broken would never be fixed. She activated her communication device. "Danny, this is Alina. We found something." Dai's voice came back tense. "What is it?" "They're not just killing them, they're processing them like animals." The communication channel was quiet for a long moment. When Danny spoke again, his voice was different, colder. "Alina, new orders, no prisoners, no survivors, kill them all." Alina smiled, and it was the smile of a monster who had finally been given permission to be what she really was. "Copy that." The second camp died screaming. The war changed after the humans found the processing plants. What had started as a rescue mission became something else entirely, something darker and more terrible than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Danny Wright stood in the command center of the Retribution, watching reports flow in from across the altar system. His people were no longer just fighting the CFT, they were hunting them. "Amy, show me the communications intercepts," Danny said. Amy Parker's enhanced voice came through the speakers. She had been plugged into the ship systems for 3 days straight. Her mind merged with the computer networks. "The Kree home fleet is getting scared. Listen to this." The speakers crackled with alien voices, speaking in the harsh clicking language of the Kree. Amy translated in real time. "Fleet Commander Zaxthul to High Command, the human ship appears and disappears like a ghost. We have lost 47 vessels. Request immediate reinforcements." High Command to Fleet Commander. "Reinforcements are not available. Deal with one human ship yourself." "One ship that fights like 100. They do not follow proper war protocols. They attack medical ships. They board our vessels and leave no survivors. These humans are not civilized warriors. They are monsters." Danny smiled coldly. "Good. Fear makes enemies stupid. What else do you have?" "I've been playing with their computer systems," Amy said. "Watch this." On the main screen, Danny saw a CRT supply convoy heading toward one of their bases. Suddenly, the automated defense systems at the base opened fire on their own ships. The convoy died in a storm of energy blasts. "I reprogrammed their identification systems," Amy explained. "Now their own weapons think they're enemies. I've done this to 17 bases so far." Captain Nina Davis walked onto the bridge. She was Alina's second in command for ground operations. Her uniform was torn and covered in alien blood, but she was smiling. "How did it go?" Danny asked. "The 4th prison camp is empty. We got all the survivors out." Naz's smile faded. "But we found Something else, records of what they've been doing, videos. Danny felt his stomach turn cold. Show me, nah. Activated her portable display. Images appeared that made even Danny and LT, Unk and GT, wise. Hardened soul recoil. The Kree hadn't just been killing Altarians, they had been experimenting on them, testing new ways to cause pain, using children for medical research. One video showed Kree scientists dissecting a living Alaran child while discussing the best methods for keeping subjects conscious during the procedure. Danny turned off the display. Around the bridge, his people stood in silence. These were men and women who had seen the worst things one being could do to another, but this was beyond anything their experience. How many of our people have seen this? Danny asked. All the ground teams. Word is spreading to the fleet crews. Na paused. Danny, they're asking for new orders. They want to know if the rules have changed. Danny looked around at the faces on his bridge. Tony Martinez at the navigation station, Kevin Stone at the weapons console, Amy's voice coming from the computer systems, all of them waiting for his decision. The rules change the moment we found those processing plants. Danny said new orders for all teams. Kree wanted to play extinction games. Now they get to find out what it feels like. Nan nodded. What about their civilian populations? Danny was quiet for a long moment. Are there CRT civilians, or are they all part of the war machine that does this too? Children. Intel says their entire society is built around conquest and killing. Every Kree serves in the military at some point. Then they all made their choice. Dai's voice was flat and cold. Alina, are you listening to this? Alina's voice came through the communication system from the planet surface. I'm here. New mission. Find every CRT installation in this system. Military bases, supply depots, communication stations, everything, and then make them disappear permanently. Over the next week, the humans showed the galaxy what monsters could really do when they stopped pretending to be civilized. Kevin Stone flew bombing runs that turned entire Kree military bases into smoking craters, but he didn't just destroy them quickly. He would hit the power systems first, trapping the defenders in darkness. Then he would hit the weapons, leaving them defenseless. Only then would he destroy the barracks and command centers, making sure everyone inside had time to understand what was happening to them. Alina's ground teams didn't just attack Kree positions, they turned the aliens' own cruelty against them. When they captured a Kree commander, they would use the aliens' own torture devices on him, broadcasting his screams on all Kree communication channels. Amy's cyber warfare became psychological torture. She would take control of Cress and play the recorded screams of dying Alaran children through every speaker on their ships. She would hack their personal messages and replace family photos with images of their dead comrades. The Kree fleet began to fall apart. Ships refused orders. Officers shot each other during arguments. Some vessels simply shut down their systems and drifted in space. Their crews too terrified to continue fighting, but the humans weren't done. Danny received a message from the Galactic Council demanding that he stop the attacks and negotiate a peaceful solution. He recorded his response and broadcast it on all channels. This is Colonel Danny Wright of the human ship Retribution. You want to negotiate? Fine, here are my terms. Every Kree who participated in the genocide of the Altarian people will die. Every world that supported them will pay the same price they tried to make the Altarians pay. Every ship in their fleet will become debris. He paused, looking directly into the camera. You had your chance to help when it mattered. You chose to hold meetings while children died. Now you get to watch what happens when you force decent people to become monsters. The Galactic Council's response was predictable. They called the human actions barbaric and excessive. They demanded an immediate ceasefire and threatened sanctions against Earth. Danny and LT Unk and GTY's response was to order Tony to plot a course for the Kree home systems. The final message came from Fleet Commander Zach Thur himself. The alien's voice was high and panicked as Amy translated his words. Human ship. This is the Kree Fleet Commander. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. Danny activated the communication system. There are no terms. There is no surrender. There is only what you did to those children and what we're going to do to you. Because of it, we are willing to negotiate. We can pay tribute. We can relocate away from the system. You can die. Danny said simply, that's all you can do now. The CH commander's voice became desperate. We are not monsters. We are civilized beings following our nature. Danny laughed, and it was a sound like breaking glass. Civilized. You processed children into food. You tortured prisoners for fun. You tried to exterminate an entire species. His voice dropped to a whisper. We know what monsters look like. We see them in the mirror every morning. Then why are you different from us? Danny looked around his bridge at the people who had followed him into hell and become demons to save the innocent, because we only become monsters to stop worse monsters. And when the work is done, we remember what we used to be. His voice hardened again. You were born monsters and stayed that way. That's why you have to die. The communication channel went silent. 3 hours later, the Kree fleet began its final attack. Every remaining ship in the system converged on the Retribution. In one desperate assault, Danny watched them come and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Altarian children were about to be avenged. The final battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, there were no CFT ships left in the Altar system. Danny Wright stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the debris field that stretched across space. Twisted metal and frozen alien bodies drifted in the darkness. The insect-like ships that had terrorized the Altarians for months were now nothing but scrap and memories. Kevin Stone slumped in his pilot seat, exhausted from the constant combat. Flying, that's the last of them. 63 ships destroyed in the final assault. Tony Martinez checked the damage reports. On his screens, we're hurt bad. Hull breaches on 7 decks, main engines down to 30%. If they had sent one more wave, we might not have made it. Amy Parker's voice came through the speakers. Weaker than before, she had been connected to the ship systems for almost a week, pushing her enhanced mind beyond safe limits. I'm reading no CRE energy signatures in the system. They're all dead or gone. Danny felt something inside his chest that might have been relief, but it was mixed with something darker, something that would never go away. Alina Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system from the planet surface. Danny, you need to come down here. Survivors want to meet you. An hour Later, Danny stood in what used to be the central plaza of Alter Prime's capital city, the beautiful flower-like buildings were burned ruins now, but they Altarian survivors had gathered in the space between them. Thousands of blue-kin people looked at him with large eyes that held gratitude and fear. In equal measure, their leader, the elder Zefka, approached slowly. He was old, even by Altarian standards, his skin pale blue-white with age, but his telepathic abilities were still strong. And Danny could feel the alien mind touching his thoughts. "We owe you our lives," Zephyr said in careful English. 2 million of us survived because you came when we called. Danny nodded. CFTH won't hurt anyone again. No, they will not. The alien elder was quiet for a moment, his large eyes studying Danny and LT Unc and GTY's face. "But we must speak of what we saw in your minds, what we called upon around them." The other survivors listened in silence. Many were wounded, all were traumatized. But they were alive. "You looked into human minds and saw monsters," Danny said. "You called us anyway." "We called you because we saw monsters who protected children, monsters who became terrible things to stop worse things." Zevka's mental touch grew stronger. "But we also saw the price you pay for becoming what we needed." Danny felt the alien reading his thoughts, seeing his memories of the war, understanding what it had cost him and his people to save the Altarians. "You cannot go back to what you were before," Zeka said sadly. "You have seen too much, done too much. You are forever changed." Elena walked up beside Danny. Her face was hard as stone, marked by things she had seen and done during the ground fighting. Behind her came the other members of their team. Kevin with his haunted pilot's eyes, Amy, barely able to stand after days, connected to the ship systems, all of them marked by the war they had fought. "We knew the price when we started," Elena said. "Some things are worth becoming monsters for." Zevkin nodded slowly. "You saved us, but you could not save yourselves from what you had to become to do it." Danny looked around at the ruined city, at the grateful survivors, at his own people who had sacrificed everything to answer a cry for help. "Elder, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you looked into human minds across the galaxy, what did you see in the normal people, the ones who didn't come?" Zeva was quiet for a long moment. "We saw good hearts, people who wanted to help but were afraid, people who cared about justice, but not enough to risk everything for strangers." He paused. "We saw people who could sleep at night, and in us we saw people who could not sleep at night until the children were safe." Danny felt Elena's hand on his shoulder, felt the understanding that passed between them without words. They were no longer the people they had been when they left Earth. They were something else now, something necessary but frightening. "What happens now?" Kevin asked. Danny activated his communication device. Signals were already coming in from Earth, angry voices demanding explanations, threats of court-martial and imprisonment. The government that had been too slow to help was now quick to condemn those who had acted without permission. "Earth wants us to come home for trial," Danny said. "They're calling us war criminals." Amy laughed bitterly. "War criminals for stopping a genocide while they held committee meetings. The Galactic Council is demanding our extradition." Tony added. "They want to put us on trial for excessive use of force and failure to follow proper diplomatic procedures." Elena's smile was cold. Proper procedures like letting children get processed into food while we file paperwork. Danny looked at his people. These monsters who had saved an entire species, these criminals who had done what heroes couldn't do. I have an idea. He said, Amy, can you access the communication networks? Always send a message to every human military unit in the galaxy, every veteran who got thrown out for being too good at their job, every person who ever wanted to protect someone but got told they were too dangerous for civilized society. Danny walked to the center of the plaza, where a holographic transmitter had been set up. When he spoke, his words would be broadcast across human space. My name is Colonel Danny Wright. 6 months ago, the Altarians sent a cry for help. While Earth debated, we answered. While the galaxy held meetings, we fought. While civilized people worried about proper procedures, we saved 2 million innocent lives. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Earth calls us criminals. The Galactic Council calls us monsters. They're both right. We became criminals. To stop a genocide, we became monsters. To save children, and we would do it again. Behind him, his team stood at attention. Scarred, exhausted, forever changed, but unbroken. To every human who has been told they're too dangerous for peace, too violent for civilization, too willing to fight for what's right, you have a choice. Go home and pretend to be normal while knowing what you really are, or come here and help us build something new. Danny and LT Unk and GTY's voice grew stronger. The galaxy needs monsters. It just doesn't want to admit it, so we'll be the monsters they need. Whether they want us or not, we'll protect the species that can't protect themselves. We'll stop the genocides that others are too civilized to prevent. And when the next cry for help comes from across the dark, we'll answer. He looked around at the Altarian survivors at the ruined city. They were already beginning to rebuild. This is our home now. Anyone who wants to hunt monsters is welcome. Anyone who wants to stop genocides can find us here, and anyone who thinks they can do to others what the Kree tried to do here will discover why the galaxy learned to fear humanity in the first place. The transmission ended within hours. Responses began coming in. Veterans who had been discharged for being too effective, soldiers who had been court-martialed for protecting civilians, pilots who had been grounded for taking necessary risks, all of them asking the same question: when do we leave? Danny stood with Elena on the observation deck of the Retribution, looking down at Alter Prime, where the reconstruction was beginning. In the distance, other ships were arriving, human ships, carrying people like them, people who had answered the call to become what the galaxy needed. Do you think we did the right thing? Elena asked. Danny thought about the Altarian children who were alive because of what they had done. He thought about the CF who would never hurt anyone again. He thought about the price they had all paid to become the monsters the situation required. I think we did the only thing we could do, he said, and I think that has to be enough. Above them the stars waited. Somewhere out there other species might face extinction. Other cries for help might echo across the dark. When they came, humanity's monsters would be ready to answer.